Today I'm going to show you how to make a pinwheel quilt block. So each of these little squares. So I'm going to show you. You can make your own pinwheel quilt. And so I wanted to show you a couple tricks that make it go a lot faster. If you've been sewing, then you probably know that if you start cutting fabric, so I'll just start at this 10-inch because I'm making 10-inch squares right now. So I got a little slit, you just rip it, and it will rip in a straight line. It just goes along like the weaving of the threads. So I'm going to do that. I'm cutting out 42 10-inch squares of this and then 42 of another fabric.
Mine are 10-inch squares, but you can do whatever size you want. It's important to realize that the size square you cut out is not going to be the size of quilt block It'll end up being slightly bigger because you're combining two of these squares together.
Alright, I've got everything cut out. I have 42 of these and 42 of these. And so a lot of times people will do 42 white or something and then a combination of 42 different patterns that coordinate. But I had just had a lot of this. So this is like my background one. And then these are there's a variety of neutrals in here. So this next step we're gonna do is you'll take one of each and you'll put the right sides together. And then we'll just sew a 1/4 inch around the whole thing. And I'll show you a little trick you can do so that you don't have as much cutting, and you don't need to worry about back stitching here because all of these seams will be covered with other things, really. Okay, so when you're sewing, you normally start and end with back stitching to kind of knot it together so it doesn't come loose. But with quilting, all these stitches are going to be covered up with more fabric sewn together, and like all the ends of the stitching will be covered, so you really don't need to back stitch. So in this case, when I'm going to do a bunch of the same thing, you can just take a scrap piece of fabric and get it started. Put the needle down. No need to back stitch, but just get going. And then when it gets to the end, I'm going to take this that I'm going to sew and I'll just put it right behind it and just sew. When I get to the corner, leave the needle down, pick up the foot, turn it, put it back down, make sure this is lined up. Do that all the way around. Okay, now here's a little trick that'll save you time when you get to the end. You just grab your next one, right sides facing together, and you just slide it right behind it. And you'll just keep doing this with all 42 sets of squares.
Once you have all of your squares sewn together, you can cut them diagonally across. So you cut corner to corner and you'll end up with 4 pieces. And then as you unfold those and arrange them, you'll see how they will make a pinwheel. So as you cut all of these squares diagonally, you'll want to keep your 4 pieces together, just so that when you put all of your blocks together, they'll be the right fabric pairings.
Okay, so I've got stacks of all of my squares that are cut into the triangles. Well, they're cut into squares, but I've got them all separated into little sets. And each of these sets will become like a quilt square, quilt block, I don't know what they call them. But, so now I'll take each one, so I've got 4 pieces, and I'll take 2, open them up, and once you figure out the layout, you just know that you make them the same way each time. So the way I'm doing it is, so the seams, you're gonna be sewing your 2 pieces together with the seam going down the middle on each side, right sides facing together, and you just want to make sure they're opposite sides touching. And then I will go ahead, get them nice and lined up, and then I'll sew down this side. And I'll just do that again and again and again and again on all of them, but then I'll just keep these 2 together because these go to 1 block. And so yeah, you just keep them in order and you'll have all your blocks kind of together. So you just kind of do a lot of one thing over and over again, and then it'll go a lot faster and come together pretty quick. Now you need to make sure that you have a system going on, because you want to make sure you're sewing in the same way on each set. I made a mistake here. See, the lines are both here, but I should have had them laid out the same way. So you see it's like the dark fabric to the right side and the white fabric to the right side, right with the seam. So now when you open them up, it doesn't make a pinwheel like you want. Oh my gosh, because that's not a pinwheel. So I'm gonna have to unstitch this, but then just get in a rhythm and make sure you have the same, whether it's the background fabric or your main fabric, in the same spot, same orientation each time you go through, and then you shouldn't have any problems. When you just sew them all together and don't cut or backstitch, you just end up with this really long chain of stuff. So I'm just like to cut them all in pairs because 2 of these makes 1 block. And I just add them over here, and they should just be set up for the next step of the quilt. Yep. Okay, now that I have all of my squares sewn into these little sets of 2, I will take them, and each of these will make a block. So I'll open them up, and they will go like this. So I'll just fold them right sides together, and then I will sew them. And I'm gonna fold these seams opposite ways, just so that it's not a big bump in the fabric when it's all done. All right, let's see. Open it up, and I've got a pinwheel. So now I'm gonna do that 41 more times, and then I'll have all my blocks ready.
So this is all you need to know for making a pinwheel quilt block. You can do it different sizes. You just cut 2 squares of whatever size you're wanting to start with and make as many as you'd like for your quilt. And you can find other videos on the rest of assembling quilt blocks together to make a quilt. There are a ton of different options. And I'll show you what I did for mine. All right, so here is my quilt top. It is quite large. I ended up adding sashing between each quilt block, which is just the strips of fabric. I felt like it looked better with a little spacing in between, but there are so many different options, so many ways you can do this. So I hope you have fun making a quilt.